Have you checked out the Transformation Leaders Body of Knowledge? It was released on the 10th of June 2024 and is available now via the Transformation Leaders Hub website in digital and physical versions, as well as leading bookshops. The TLBoK provides you with a wealth of insights, proven approaches and how-to guides to support you on your transformation journey. It's a book that you will continually dip into throughout your career, rather than one that you will read and put on the shelf. Grab a copy and let me know what you think. Like any body of knowledge, we will update it with the latest thinking in future. So please, your feedback is essential. In today's episode of the Transformation Leaders podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Shane Spraggs. Shane is the author of The Power of Remote and a partner in the Future of Productivity. And our discussion explores how his experience has helped organisations make significant progress through major change and transformation. I'm sure you're going to get massive value from this episode. Let's get Shane on now. Hello, Shane. Welcome to the Transformation Leaders podcast. Great that you can join me today. There's a lot of
pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's lots that I want to cover off today. I'm keen to explore your experience as a productivity expert and some of the projects that you've been involved in there, but also your approach to hybrid working. I think that's a real focus in a lot of organisations now of how they can adapt to a new way of working that has become the norm. But before we get into that detail, please do share your story, a little bit about yourself and your background and how you first got involved in leading these sort of change and transformation activities.
Oh, thanks so much, Tony. Yeah, so I published a book with Cynthia Watson last year in February 2023 called The Power of Remote. I've got that at the ready here for any press opportunities. And it was a culmination of a lot of work towards understanding the best approaches for remote work. Cynthia herself has been involved in remote work for years. I joined a company called Vertira at the start of the pandemic, April 2020, and it was my first remote work job. But I brought with it a very good understanding of how management and leadership works. I quickly adapted my approaches and spent a lot of time just researching and working on what's the best way to run a team, make them more productive remotely, and what are the best ins and outs. What is the benefit of remote work? There's a lot of noise and information around it, and I sought out to try to come up with a model for myself. And so prior to that, I spent a lot of time in the tech industry. I've worked with a lot of different startups. I've owned a couple of startups myself. And I spent some time working for Disney for a number of years in project management. So I was overseeing the studio schedule for a number of project teams for a studio here in Kelowna that was running a game called Club Penguin at the time. I'm not sure if you remember that, but it was an international hit. If you're currently aged 16 to 18, you probably know the game very well because it was a big hit for children about 9 years ago. So it's just been a thing that's been interesting to me my entire life in terms of optimizing things. I've had my mother tell me not too long ago, I was over having supper with her, and she'd say, when you were a kid and we used to go to the grocery store, you would line up all the food on the shelves as we go down the aisles. So it's really these inherent things. I'm sure if I back in the day, I probably would have been labeled with OCD or ADHD or something like that. But I've just always had a fascination on making sure the rules are fair to everyone who's playing the game, making sure the expectations are set, and making sure things are organized and well kept after. And I've taken that approach into my business life as well.
Brilliant. I love that story. I think the whole concept of nurture nature is a fascinating area to sort of dig into. But I think, like you say, there are some types of people that will go into a place and spot things that are not right or naturally, or look to investigate those things and just find them inquisitive. and then there's others that just go in and it's oblivious. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I know a few people like that in my circle, and it's fascinating conversation that we have at times when they're
Yeah.
constantly looking at rearranging things and making things flow. I do it a little bit, but I don't think I do it in the supermarkets like you just described. Um,
I don't do that anymore, but I probably get lots of joy out of it if I did. Maybe I'll go out today and just go
what kind of
organize some
rest did you
supermarket
do
shelves.
today?
I've got enough things to organize in my own personal life that I don't need to go organize someone else's shelf. But yeah, I tend to walk in whenever I get involved in a process of some sorts. I'm always thinking about how to do it faster and how to remove steps. And my friends will tell me that my skills, my superpower is making complex things simple, and that's just really where I've landed in a lot of life and with the businesses I work with, and I guess the books I write as well.
Brilliant. We always start with the question, how do you define transformation? But before you give us the answer, I just want to go back to what you just said about your superpower of making the complex simple. So it'd be really interesting to see what your definition of transformation is, looking through that lens.
Yeah. So again, my perspective on transformation is quite simple as well. It is changing habits, moving from one habit to another, and in that, while doing that, resulting in a better process, a better revenue, or something for the people involved in that transformation. And transformation can be anything from losing weight to installing a new IT system. But at the end of the day, it is change management, and you have to move the people, because it's, you can put the new system in place, but until you teach them how to use it, it's not just that. It's teaching them. It's helping them form new habits around it. And as we know, for a lot of things in our personal lives, it does take about 4 weeks doing the same thing over and over again before it starts to feel like a habit. So that's my perspective on transformation. It is a change. It's really closely linked to how we handle the habits of an individual.
And that leads quite nicely into the next stage of what I want to talk about, and comes back to your book. In terms of, and I agree. I think transformation inherently is driven by people and changing people's mindsets, changing people's habits, changing the ways of working, and that is always the most challenging aspect of major transformation in my experience. That becomes even more challenging when people are dispersed outside of an office, dispersed across multiple geographies, multiple locations, etc., etc. So, just talk me through a little bit about the approach that you've taken when you were writing the book, and the thought process that you went through around that hybrid working and the way that leadership needs to be adapted in this world of hybrid.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, and we call the book "Power of Remote," but we struggle with that title. It really is about distributed work. The term remote work really is closely associated with someone like myself, who's I'm in my house right now, in my basement. My cat's over there, and my plants, and my kids are upstairs, enjoying summer vacation. But really, it's whenever you do work between two individuals who aren't in the same room, and it was already getting very familiar and commonplace prior to the pandemic. A lot of large multinational businesses have very complex projects, cross-functional teams spread across multiple time zones, and that's really the difficult problem to solve, and how to make those teams successful. Where remote work comes into play is it really, as I guess I'm a bit off topic here, but it provides an opportunity to transform people's well-being as well. And that was really the real takeaway from the pandemic for a lot of people, is that, oh, hey, I don't have to drive to work an hour and a half each day. That's the average, average community for people in North America at least. Don't have to spend $55 on average to go to work each day, and there's a ton of other benefits as well. So where I've since the book came out, where I've put a lot of time into is talking to a lot of CEOs and founders about how things are going. We did the full on remote for the pandemic. A lot of companies since then, some of the larger ones have mandated return to the office. A lot of the smaller ones have not gone full time back to the office. They've settled with hybrid work, and the prevailing feedback from them is that they have a real sense of opacity to where the productivity is happening. They no longer have a sense that people are working in their best interest. And there's a number of reasons for this. Most the obvious one is that they don't trust their team, right? But what it really comes down to is they don't really have the systems in place to track productivity, and their managers have the skill set to nurture it. The best question to sort of taking a step back is to ask, what is productivity for you, and how do you measure it? And this is a question that was reasonable to ask before the pandemic as well, right? So if you have people working in your office and they're at their desk all day, would you have said that they're at their desk, they're being productive? Unfortunately, that was a sufficient answer to most companies because they didn't really think hard about it. The companies that really thought about it had ways to organize their long-term strategy into their yearly priorities and break those OKRs or other objectives. My cat's going to join me here. Yeah, pleasures of working from home. And breaking those down into projects and tasks that produce value for the business and can communicate what value the individual is creating for the business when they are assigned projects and tasks. What we tend to find in a traditional office business is that people don't know why the projects exist. Often they don't necessarily know how this project fits with the other projects they're doing. The concept of budget is very obtuse. There's no sense that, hey, I'm going to work 40 hours a week on this, and this is going to cost us $80,000 if I do this full time for 6 months. We just don't even pay attention to this in a lot of the professional businesses that run projects in the office. And to enable a hybrid, I'll get to the point here. To enable a hybrid business, you need to have the system in place to both establish what the priorities are and communicate those to the team, but also track them in some fashion that shows progress in a meaningful way. I've often that it's just as easy to tell when someone's not being productive in the office as it is remotely. You get the sense of that person hasn't done that work by the end of the week that you expect them to do. They didn't hit their targets. What's different is that we don't tend to deal with it appropriately the way we normally do in the office. In the office, we put peer pressure on people. They get reminders from bosses walking around, and remotely we just sort of ignore the problem. Hope. So anyway, a lot there. But yeah, it's a combination of skill set and the proper tools to keep track of what productivity actually is and to nurture it.
Something that you said right at the start, though, around a perceived lack of trust. Yeah, there's that perception that if you're not in the office or you're working from home, then actually you're out and about, you're doing stuff because you're not visible. You can't. People can't pick up on whether you are active or not. Which is, I think, is quite interesting. Having worked remotely myself for the last however many, 20 years or so, probably, then my focus has always been, let's focus on the outcomes and the outputs. I'm not too worried about the inputs, but let's get clarity about what our expectations are in terms of the outputs.
Exactly.
And if you can do that in 50% of the time, happy days. Enjoy the 50%. We'll learn from that, and we might adapt things moving forward. But I think there is this lack of trust in lots of organisations now, and certainly the ones I've been talking to. Part of that is driving them to say we want more people to come back into the office. Is that your feel as well, in your experience?
Yeah, it's driven by lack of trust. I think that there's a sense that people they can't see, they can't touch, they can't understand, and it's when people aren't in the office, there isn't enough sufficient evidence of their byproduct. So if I have a task working on that happens to take me, 2 days, or maybe let's say 2 weeks. If I'm not constantly providing feedback to somebody to say, "Hey, I'm still working on this. This is where our problems are," if the person who's expecting that task might start to believe I'm not working on it,
Yeah.
right? And productivity is a weird thing because it's when you start measuring what productivity isn't necessarily hours at a keyboard. It's accomplishing, and producing value for the business. And a software developer who solves a problem overnight in their head is no less productive than a QA engineer who spends 4 days tracking down a bug, right? They are all doing the work that has been set out for them, and they're hopefully being measured against it. As you say, one of the challenges that remote teams have is managers. Managers don't need to have a different approach to management, but they have to be better at management. And we, for many generations, have put the wrong people in management. We haven't treated it as a competency in its own right. We don't train people well enough to be managers, and we take the best individual contributors and turn them into a manager, thereby ruining both of those skill sets. With remote work and work, there's even less. There's less evidence, or there's less mentoring for a manager who previously might have got some experience from other managers in the office, would have talked to people and had ad hoc conversations. And so we have managers these days who are even poorer at their jobs than they were before, managing blind. And there's a lot to all those blogs and business books that are out there that tell you how to be a good manager. Those tell you how to be a good manager remotely, but you need the time to experience it. You need time to put those business things into practice in order for you to do well remotely.
Yeah, it's like anything, isn't it? It's I use the analogy a lot. You can read a book around how to swim, but you never know whether you can swim or not until you get in the pool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's that practical experience, isn't it, that determines whether or not you've absorbed and whether or not you'll be able to embed some of the things that you've read about and best practices. But talking about those best practices, and again bringing it back to sort of change and transformation aspects within organisations, where we do have a tendency to drive change across multiple locations or multiple functions within organizations. So people are dispersed, and the project team tends to be dispersed these days as well. What are the sort of one or two main tips that you can give those leaders, those managers, to help them to get the most from the team and the team members?
Yeah. Probably the biggest thing for me is to not treat yourself as a superior individual on the team. You are a member of the team treat yourself as a member of the team at the same level, and your job is just to facilitate the work. You're there to make the others more successful and help them with their work. And in that way, bring them along for the ride. I'm a big believer in setting expectations and getting buy-in as being one of the biggest drivers to success and productivity for management, for a team. People hate being told what to do. So if you can bring them in along with the conversation to help them discover, what needs to be done, then they'll have buy-in. they'll understand the task better. They may have their own way of doing it. They may be able to tell you how it's going to get done. And then you can have a conversation with them about when it will be completed by and help them track time. The classic for me, and we'll just talk about, a project that might come down. So if your traditional company might have, yearly goals, and then we get broken down to quarterly department goals. Well, there's ways to involve your team in the setting of those goals by asking them, hey, what would you do if you were in my shoes? What recommendations do you have of the company? And you pass that information. And if their suggestions don't match what the company eventually goes with, you have now a mechanism to tell them why it's different. We went with this because of this, as opposed to that what you suggested. Then when it comes back down the other way, where we start breaking those goals into projects, we say, okay, we want to accomplish this goal. Help me understand how we need to break this down to accomplish that goal. And it's all about asking questions. It's all about involving the individual and having them give you ideas to take them all. I like to think about the Star Trek approach to management. There's Picard and James T. Kirk. So there's two completely separate perspectives on how to manage. James T. Kirk was always the one on the away team. He never listened to anybody who had any advice. He just did his own thing, and he barked orders to people. The Picard approach was to consult his team, and he would send other people on the away team. This is turning me into a bit of a nerd, but he would listen to all the suggestions, often encourage the team to combine ideas and come up with a better one. And on the rare occasion, he would pull rank and say, I appreciate all your feedback, but I'm going to go my way on this. And that creates a very close-knit team, a very very accountable and engaged team and motivated team to help do the work. Because then they have my cat's back here. This is Bagel. She just wants to be on top of me. Yeah. So where I was sorry. The team members, people really appreciate being brought into the process and being treated like humans, and not being told what to do. Don't give them due dates. Have them tell you when they can get it done by, and then encourage them to do a little bit sooner. People need a bit of challenge, right? So yeah, that would be my recommendations.
Good ones. The Trekkie, the Star Trek sort of analogies went above my head. I'm not a Trekkie at all. Never got into it. But the concept that you spoke about about bringing people into that discussion and asking them what their expectations are, because I found in my early career I did quite a bit of work in sales and in sales management, and when you're leading a sales team, all too often we've got this big sales target, we go pass it down into the sales team. But the clever sales managers would always say to the individuals, what do you think you can achieve this quarter? What do you think you can achieve this half year? And 99% of the time, they thought they were going to be able to deliver more than what we needed them to deliver. So, okay, brilliant, let's go with that. But because it's their target, they've bought into it, and they go. And
yes,
again, not in every case, but in a big percentage of cases, you achieved collectively a much bigger sales in that quarter or that half year or that year, because exactly what you just said, they owned that target then, didn't they? They owned the output, and that stayed with me for years. And it is this, and what we do now in terms of trying to bring people on that journey. You used a really good term earlier. You go through that discovery phase with them and let them come on that discovery phase with you, because they've got ownership of it then.
I've always been someone who pushes back when I don't know where something came from or why it's being done. And I just assume other people want to know why we're doing something and what value it might create. What's the impact of me doing this? And having the opportunity to, like you said, when can I get this done? I'll work harder on something I said I would do than if someone told me something to do something. And then the other part of management is nurturing the individual, listening to them, being empathetic, and helping measure performance, give them the longer term things for the people to do. And there it is really remotely. It's also about being very decisive and being very making decisions faster. The so it's obvious to me when someone isn't delivering on time, and remotely we let things go far too long. It's very hard to have the conversation where someone hasn't delivered something, and you want to ask them, what are you doing with your time all day? But you can have the conversation of, you missed this deadline, can you tell me why you missed it? And if it happens multiple times in a row, then you have a better conversation you can have with them. It's not necessarily the one you want to have, but it's for the betterment of your team, because your team members all know the same information. It's never a surprise for the rest of the team when someone who isn't productive, um, is terminated or dealt with, because they know already. And the sooner you deal with it, the sooner they realize that it's important to you and the company that people are productive and do what they say they're supposed to do. They say they would do.
Absolutely. And coming back to that, again, people working remotely, one of the advantages when everyone's in the office, you can walk around, you can walk and talk and just observe how people are reacting. You can start to see if people got their head down, if they're feeling a bit down in the dumps. What type of things can we do in the remote world to help us to look after the well-being of the team, really, and get some type of early indications of when people are not feeling comfortable or not feeling on top of the world?
Yeah, it is harder. It is definitely harder. The camera helps a bit. You can, if you're on camera with someone, you can usually see if they're, if they aren't feeling well, they're not well rested. You can also often tell that there's been a change in what they're wearing. If they haven't been keeping themselves well, and it's important to ask those questions. How are you feeling today? Maybe doing some more probing around. I've noticed that you haven't been as engaged, haven't engaged as much in the meetings as you used to. Is there something bothering you? And recognize that your role as a manager is not to be a psychologist. It's another trap that managers sometimes fall into. But you can be the first line of defense, where you can raise a flag to HR or other members of the team who are responsible for the well-being of the people in your business. If there's a program that the business might be subscribed to for well-being, that you can encourage them to use it, and then recognize that at the end of the day, your role as a manager is to manage performance and to try to help them through that as well. A good manager will be very well practiced with active listening. They'll be able to listen to someone and share back what they've heard. They also create a good environment of psychological safety. And what that is that they creates an environment where people feel comfortable making mistakes, and they won't be reprimanded for. And that's a really important one, and because it's where innovation comes from, is people make mistakes and they fix them and they learn, and that's an important aspect for a manager to learn.
Yeah, I think, and if you can get that culture of psychological safety in place within your team, and people start looking out for each other as well, don't they? And don't feel that they're pointing fingers if someone's, not pulling the weight. That ability to engender that sort of culture within the team is so important. On your LinkedIn profile, you talk about you seeing yourself, or you describe yourself, should I say, not see yourself. You describe yourself as a future of work thought leader. Tell me more about that.
Well, I pay attention to it. I really enjoy the topic. I'm always wondering about what is work going to look like in a few years' time. We've just come through a very um, impactful period of the last 4 years where the pandemic happened. It forced everyone to get exposed to remote work, and apart from any many companies didn't stay remote, but what it did was it opened our eyes to it, and we're now seeing a lot of hybrid work companies where yes, you can go work from home 2 or 3 days a week, and that's fine. It's giving people a pause to ask the question, well, what is work? Why are we working? What do I want out of work? More so would have been in, say, my parents' generation, where it was expected for you to go to, a single company for 25, 30 years, and they would pay your pension. So what is the point of it? And it gives it some, still is some minch happening with the AI coming on. There's even more push towards the 4-day work week. There's more recognition that, hey, you're not going to be productive 8 hours of the day. You never are and have never been. Even in the office, you might get 4 or 5 hours of productivity out of somebody in a day. The fact that you need rest and relaxation to be focused, to have those points of time of focus, you need time to work on things without interruptions. And then just where is this going for us as a society? Is this healthy for us to have people working from their house all the time? I think there's an element that is healthy in the sense that I think we're seeing a shift from people getting their social fix at the office to being able to have a social life outside the office, and they have more time for it, which I think is going to inherently improve the communities we live in. So if people have more opportunity to spend more time with their neighbors and within the community, then they can have a greater respect and have put more effort into making that a better place to live. And then I also think about where I think is going to go in the long term. One of the things that interests me is this idea of, if I was to start I used to have started a business recently, but if someone's starting a business these days, at what point do they say, "Oh, let's get an office for $5,000 or $6,000 a month"? Where does that money come from, right? And it feels like to me that just logically, we're going to see more businesses start up as remote businesses. As a entrepreneur, you're going to pick the best people to do the work, not necessarily those you have to choose from. And these days, you can choose from anywhere in the world. So even if you choose from your regional area, they're probably still not going to be within commuting distance. And so what does that do for our future businesses? The next Amazons and Microsofts and Facebooks are being created in someone's basement right now. Give it 5 years. There's already businesses that are 400, 500 people plus that are working remotely and have been since their inception. So what does that do to businesses as we know it going forward, and the choices we have for work?
Yeah, and in my experience, a lot of it is one size doesn't fit all. So when you are looking to build a team out or grow a team, having a full remote operation or a full in office operation is not really ever going to be the way forward in my experience now, because it's about the individuals. It's about what's right for the individual, isn't it? Because some people, it just doesn't work to work from home. I was working with a law firm during the pandemic, and I remember talking to one of the senior partners, and I was saying, "How are you getting on?" And she said, "I'm really struggling." And I said, "Oh, well," I was quite surprised. And she said, "Well, I'm stuck in this 2-bedroom flat in London, in a really, really nice part of London. So, and any other time it'd be perfect, but I'm stuck in there. I've got an hour a day to go out and exercise, but I'm just seeing the same 4 walls, and I live on my own." And that was really draining her, and she was one of the most vibrant people normally. But again, as you saying, organizations are now saying, let's go back into the office. And people are like, well, no, I don't want to do that. I know I can work just as effectively from home. There's a bit of a joke, standing joke in the UK. Lots of people went out and bought dogs. So we've got all these sort of COVID dogs that, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
I can't bring that into the office. And it's that type of, the world's changed, hasn't it? And
It has.
we've got to provide opportunities for the needs of the individual rather than maybe in the past a one-size-fits-all type of approach would be the way forward. But I think it'd be interesting to get your view as well. What we're finding in the UK, there are a lot of these remote virtual office type of complexes opening up in city centres and in small towns now, where you can get co-working spaces. So it's a bit of a midpoint really. You're not going back into the office, so you're not working as in an organisation, but you are getting the interaction and you are getting out of your four walls in your basement or in your back bedroom or whatever. And that seems to be picking up massively in the UK. Is that the same over in North America?
Yeah, absolutely. I was speaking with an individual this morning. I went to chat with the manager of a place in town called Spaces, and they offer space for co-working. And they have about 3,000 offices worldwide right now, locations where you can go rent a desk or an office or a boardroom for a day or whatever. And this gives people more choice. I work downstairs in my house a large portion of the time. I enjoy it. I can focus my time, but every once in a while I need a change of pace, right? And it's not for everyone. There's studies been shown that if you take 10 people, one of them probably wants to be in the office full time, and two of them probably want to be remote full time, and the other seven want somewhere between 1 to 4 days in the office each week. And there's value to it. I'm going to tell you that there's value to in-person meetings with people. It's easier to build rapport. It's easier to have aha moments and have great discussions when you see the other half of the person's body, and you can put things on walls. There's some value to it. That's not to say that you have to have that to be successful. And there's plenty of ways for businesses to mitigate or have workarounds for those losses, and that's a lot of things that I share in the book. So in many respects, having a flexible work environment isn't really about having hybrid or remote or in office. It's about having a plan to take advantage of all the necessities, all the ingredients you need to be successful as a business. And that includes, if you can get people together on a regular basis to do some planning, right? It's plan in person, work, do the work in as individuals. Give people some time to focus and uninterrupted with the tasks that you come up with, and then meet again every once in a while. So I'm hoping that where the future goes with work is that fewer businesses with offices, but we'll have more budget set aside for getting people together.
Yeah, no, I think that's essential, isn't it? It's that ability to bring people together, as you say, that the energy that's created when people come together, especially in a creative type of environment, is massive. And I've tried it many times to recreate that through Teams. And there's lots of tools out there that you can, as you say, you can put stuff up on the virtual wall and things like that, so you can replicate what you can get in an in-person room. But I haven't quite got there. I think there is definitely something missing that I haven't been able to find a way around. And a lot of it is that energy that you get by just bouncing things off, feeling, touching, and talk over. It's much more difficult to do that in a Teams or a Zoom environment.
Well, it's generational as well. I think the generations coming up right now are more in tune with technology, more familiar. My youngest daughter was born a year after the iPhone came out, and doesn't know a world without it. The concept of her not having her pocket full time is foreign to her, and her and her friends will text each other while they're standing in front of each other.
Yeah.
So this next generation, upcoming generations who play Call of Duty online and have very well connected teams of people they've never met, are going to be looking for those remote work opportunities because they thrive while interacting with a computer, and interacting with individuals is going to be harder for them. So I think we're going to see some more change over the next little while as the next generation comes up and enters the workforce. On an interesting sort of counter argument, I would recommend anyone coming out of university or college to take a job in the office for at least the first 5 years. Don't go work from home. You need to learn some basics of the fundamentals of working with individuals, and it's harder to learn that when you do that at home. And create some good habits. Like we started the conversation with, let's create those best practices, that how to deal with people, how to handle conflict, how to, what to expect from various roles, and where your position is in the business, and showing up on time, that sort of thing.
Yeah, great points. You reminded me of a piece of research I was reading a few weeks ago about the significant fall in the phone traffic in the shall we say, the youth of today, which makes me feel really old and sound really old. But the report I was looking at, the study I was looking at, was saying that in reality, probably in 20, 30 years' time, telephony usage will be down to sort of single digits in terms of percentage of what it is these days, because people just don't pick the phone up anymore. They don't. Everything's text or everything's instant messaging.
Or Twitter, or Twitter sized messages, or TikTok style videos. This is one of the other areas I'm really excited about, is that there's been a rise in the asynchronous communication, where because the next generation is so comfortable with doing a selfie or doing like a 2 or 3 minute spiel for a video, we're seeing more and more that people are sending video messages to people in lieu of text. And they're far more descriptive. You can show screenshots and whatnot. And so there's another area where things are evolving over, to accommodate remote work or people who are in the office, or distributed teams, or hybrid, in work environments, because it helps reduce meetings. It helps reduce confusion around how to work with something just by recording a short video, a concept that is completely foreign to someone in my generation who would do everything but. They would not want to do it. So it is a we'll see a change. We're seeing that change as we go now. Yeah.
And that links into actually our organizations as a whole need to adapt, because they are consumers. So they will be future consumers. So the way that they want to, not just within the internal teams, the way that they want to interact with their service providers will change. So as a organization, we need to be adapting our ways of interacting with our potential customer base, or customer base now. And that sort of adaptation will create a massive amount of change and transformation for many organizations in the next 10, 15 years.
Well, the amount of transformation happening these days is probably higher than ever been. Between the changes to with remote work, the expectations of wellness and well-being from employees, the greater attention towards workflow automation, and more recently AI. There's just been so much change these last few years that most business owners' heads are spinning, I think, at this point. And we're just getting started. AI is really hasn't found its place yet, but it is getting there, and I use it every day just to help me with my writing and how I'm working with things. But we're starting to see it pop up in very creative ways as a tool. It should be, helping to capture data, help us with routine tasks, and what do we do with all the extra time on our hands? We used, as a society, we used to be happy with creating stuff on in triplicate on a typewriter, and that was an advancement over handwriting. So what are we going to do with all the extra time? We're going to find new and different ways to use that time, and that's exciting to me.
I agree. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think lots of people historically had exactly this sort of situation. Well, all this new technology has come in to give us loads and loads of free time, and you look back and you think, where's all that free time gone? Because stuff just taking up social media, etc., etc. All these new things that have been created to fill that time, and a lot of us feeling even more stressed than we were 20, 30 years ago when we didn't have all of this technology to simplify our world. And yeah, I think it will continue to be a challenge for all of us. But I think it's a great point to sort of conclude your message that the world of transformation is bigger now these days, and the amount of transformation that's happening these days is significantly more than ever before. So in terms of people getting hold of your book, contacting you, what's the best way of doing that? Well,
I'm on LinkedIn, as most people are. It's if you want to look for the book on Amazon, Power of Remote is it's there. It was a bestseller for a few weeks back in March of last year in a couple of categories, so it's well reviewed. And I'm happy to reach out to him. And yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best. Shane Spraggs on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only one. There's not too many other Shane Spraggses out there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, Shane. We'll put all those details in the show notes. But thank you.
It's been a pleasure, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Once again, thanks, Shane. I've picked up a few nuggets there, and I'm sure others will have too. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We're always interested in hearing from you. What do you find useful from this pod? What do you want us to explore more in the future? Please do press the subscribe button. It helps us to reach more people and share the experience of all my guests. And remember to check out my new book, The Transformation Leaders Body of Knowledge, available on the Transformation Leaders Hub website. See the links in the show notes. See you soon.